You finally touch down after a 7-hour flight. You've been dreaming about this trip to the Amalfi Coast or that family reunion in Chicago for months. You stand up, grab your carry-on from the overhead bin, and feel a slight cramp in your left calf. You figure it's just the cramped seats or old age catching up to you. You walk toward baggage claim, thinking the worst part of the journey is behind you. But inside your leg, something catastrophic is happening. A thick, gelatinous mass of blood has formed in your deep veins, and every step you take toward that taxi stand is acting like a pump, pushing that clot closer and closer to your lungs. By the time you reach your hotel, you aren't just tired, you're a ticking time bomb. I've spent the last 15 years in vascular medicine, treating thousands of patients who thought they were just fine until they weren't. I've seen world-class athletes and active retirees alike end up in my ER because they ignored the one thing the airlines and travel agents never talk about. If you're over 65, the rules of travel have changed. The plumbing in your body doesn't handle 30,000 feet the way it did when you were 30. And frankly, the generic advice to walk around the cabin isn't just basic, it's dangerously incomplete. Most people think a blood clot or deep vein thrombosis, DVT, is something that happens to unhealthy people. That's the first lie. The second lie is that you'll know it when it happens. In reality, half of all people who develop a DVT have absolutely no symptoms at all. They feel great until the moment they can't breathe. This is what we call economy class syndrome. But don't let the name fool you. Your blood doesn't care if you're in first class or a middle seat in row 42. Here's the secret no one tells you. Flying is a perfect storm for your circulatory system. When you're up that high, the cabin pressure is lower than it is at sea level. This isn't just about your ears popping. It actually reduces the amount of oxygen in your blood and causes your vessels to slightly dilate. But it gets worse. Because you're sitting in a cramped space for hours, your calf pump, the muscles that normally squeeze your veins to push blood back up to your heart, is completely turned off. Your blood starts to pool, it gets sluggish, it starts to thicken. Now, you might be asking, why is 65 the magic number? It's not magic, it's biology. As we age, our vein walls and valves naturally lose some of their elasticity. Think of it like an old garden hose that's starting to get some kinks. When you add the dehydration that comes with recycled airplane air, your blood becomes more like molasses than water. I know this sounds crazy, but stick with me. I'm not telling you this to keep you grounded. I'm telling you this because the standard advice you've heard, like wearing any old pair of socks or drinking an extra ginger ale, is probably doing more harm than good. If you want to keep traveling the world without ending up in a hospital bed in a foreign country, you need to understand the mechanics of what's happening in your legs right now. Most travelers are focused on the destination. They're thinking about the museums, the food, and the photos. But if you're over 65, your most important job starts the second you scan your boarding pass. We're going to pull back the curtain on why the solutions you think are working are actually useless. And I'm going to show you the exact protocol I give my own parents before they hop on a plane. You've worked too hard for your retirement to let a preventable clot take it away from you. So, if you value your health as much as your frequent flyer miles, hit that subscribe button, because we are about to break down the science of survival at 35,000 feet. But before we get into the how-to, we have to address the silent signs. Because while I said many clots have no symptoms, there are 3 specific, tiny red flags that people over 65 miss every single day. Think about the last time you felt a Charlie horse or a bit of tightness in your leg after a long day. You probably just rubbed it out, maybe took some magnesium, and went about your business. But here's the terrifying truth. When you're over 65, your body starts whispering these warnings instead of shouting them. In my clinic, I've heard the same story 1,000 times. Doc, I thought it was just a pulled muscle from walking through the terminal. By the time they see me, that pulled muscle is a 3-inch clot that's already starting to fragment. See, the medical books tell you to look for a leg that's swollen like a balloon or turning bright red. But in reality, about 50% of the time, DVT is a ghost. It's silent. You might feel a slight heaviness, a weird warm spot on your calf, or a tiny bit of tenderness when you flex your foot. If you're waiting for unbearable pain to tell you something is wrong, you're playing a losing game with your life. But it gets even more complicated because of how our biology shifts after 65. Your blood isn't just thicker because you're older, it's actually chemically different. After 60, your body starts producing higher levels of fibrinogen, the protein that acts like the glue for clots. In fact, studies show that seniors with high fibrinogen levels are twice as likely to develop DVT. Pair that with vein walls that have lost their snap, and you've essentially turned your legs into a slow-moving swamp where blood just loves to settle and harden. And then you step onto the plane. Here is where the expert secret comes in. It's not just the sitting that kills you, it's the air. Airplane cabins are pressurized to simulate about 8,000 feet of altitude. This creates hypobaric hypoxia, which is just a fancy way of saying there's less oxygen in your blood. This low oxygen environment actually triggers your body's clotting cascade. Your system thinks you're injured and starts trying to plug the leaks. Except there are no leaks, just perfectly healthy veins getting clogged up by mistake. Now, you might be asking, what about all that water I'm drinking? Look, I love hydration, but the air on a plane has about 10% humidity. That's drier than the Sahara Desert. You are losing moisture through your breath and skin every single minute you're in the air. This makes your blood even more concentrated and sticky. I know this sounds like a lot to manage while you're trying to enjoy your vacation, but stick with me, because there is a way to hack this system. Before we move on, I want you to do me a favor. Drop a comment below and tell me the longest flight you've ever taken. It helps me understand the mileage we're dealing with here. And honestly, some of your travel stories are incredible. But here's the real kicker. Most people think once they land and walk it off, they're safe. They couldn't be more wrong. The average time for a travel-related clot to show its face is actually 4 days after you land. Some don't even pop up for 8 weeks. You could be back home, unpacking your suitcase, when the real danger hits. So, how do we stop this before the plane even leaves the tarmac? We've looked at the hidden biology and the silent warnings, but now we need to talk about your survival kit. Because let's be honest, you aren't going to stop flying. You have grandkids to see and bucket lists to check off. But if you're over 65, you cannot rely on luck anymore. You need a strategy. The first thing we have to address is the aspirin myth. For decades, people thought taking a baby aspirin before a flight was the ultimate insurance policy. Here's the reality. DVT is a venous clot, and aspirin primarily works on arterial platelets. While it's great for heart health, most modern vascular research suggests that for DVT prevention, aspirin is about as effective as a glass of water, and for some, it actually increases the risk of internal bleeding at high altitudes. If you want real protection, you need to focus on mechanical prophylaxis. This starts with your gear. Those travel socks you see in the gift shop, they are usually garbage. To actually move blood against gravity when you're 65 plus, you need medical-grade graduated compression stockings. Look for a rating of 15-20 mmHg. The graduated part is key. It means they are tightest at the ankle and get looser as they go up. This creates a literal pressure gradient that forces blood out of your lower legs and back toward your heart. But gear is only half the battle. You need the seat-bound survival drill. You've been told to walk around, but on a turbulent 10-hour flight, that's not always possible. Instead, I want you to perform isometric calf pumps every 30 minutes. Keep your heels on the floor and lift your toes as high as they can go. Then, Keep your toes down and lift your heels until your calves are tight. Repeat this 20 times. This mimics the natural walking motion and manually squeezes the deep veins, clearing out the stagnant blood that's trying to settle. Now, let's talk about the hydration trap. Most seniors avoid drinking water on planes because they don't want to use the tiny, cramped lavatories. That is a dangerous mistake. Dehydration makes your blood viscous. Think of it like trying to pump cold maple syrup through a straw. You need to be drinking at least 8 ounces of water for every hour you're in the air. And sorry, but the pre-flight cocktail or the third cup of coffee doesn't count. Alcohol and caffeine are diuretics. They literally pull water out of your bloodstream. Here's my pro protocol for your next trip. The 24-hour pre-game. Start hydrating the day before your flight. The wardrobe. Wear your 15-20 mAg compression socks from the moment you wake up on travel day. The in-flight move. Set a timer on your watch for every 30 minutes to do your calf pumps. The post-flight watch. For the next 7 days, check your legs for the big 3. Warmth, tenderness, or one-sided swelling. I know this seems like a lot of work just to get from point A to point B, but I've sat at the bedside of too many people whose dream vacation ended on day 2 in a pulmonary ward. You've spent your life building your legacy. Don't let a preventable blood clot be the thing that cuts it short. If you found this helpful, do me a favor and share this with a travel buddy. The airlines aren't going to warn us, so we have to look out for each other. Now, go book that trip. Just make sure you've got your socks packed first. Safe travels.